Hello everyone. Welcome to our presentation here on our Group 5. I'm Mark, the group leader of the Group 5 here on Ethics class, which we will be tackling about here today. Our presentation, supposedly it's gonna be on site, but since there is time constraints, we apologize for this one by doing this online. Pero guys, right now we're going to tackle something very fascinating. We're going to tackle here on our presentation how do we get away with murder. Parang that's something that you don't really hear much in the television. How do we get away with murder? For example, let's say how to get away with murder. For example, just imagine pinatay ko si Sir Paul. Like I tried to get a knife, grab a knife, and then killed him. Namatay si Sir Paul on that one. Ngayon, anong mangyayari? When we do something very serious, let's say for example a crime, pinatay ko Sir Paul, diba? We think of a lot of things. We critically think for most cases. And we somehow develop a plan. Diba? Parang galing natin when we are doing these things. One is, first, siguro, if pinatay ko Sir Paul, grabe, umamin sa police. That's the first one. Second is, pumuntang probinsya, hanap ng babae. Diba? Parang that's the plan. And then, pangatlo, tatawagan ko si Migs, tago natin yung bangkay ni Sir Paul. O kaya, Michael, tago natin si Stop. Patago natin yung bangkay ni Sir Paul. And then, or fourth, for some people, they will commit suicide. And fifth, a lot of things. And why do we have this as some sort of escape plan for all of us? Because there is an essence when we are in a serious moment, we are able to think critically. We have to imagine. We always think, sometimes you only think critically when something is urgent or of utter importance. We always forget the reality na kailangan natin mag-isip palagi. You're forgetting that. We always think lang when it's serious. And that is why we have to develop a truth. Truth that is relative is not absolute at all. Truth that is not absolute is subject to inconsistency. This is not going to be your normal class. This is going to be your ethics class in which all of us would have to ponder and think about the absolute truth, or else nothing is good. We have to think about the best things out there which is true and is not relative. Bakit? Kasi let's just, think of something that is just relative. It's a lot of inconsistencies. We have to ponder and think critically. That's why in this presentation that we have, we're going to tackle about several things. First, we have to what? In order for us to critically think, we have to think and critically think. This is what we are about to do in finding out the truth. Second is we ask question. Third, we test the question. And fourth, we synthesize the thought, the question, the thought that we have. Bakit? If we want to be logical enough to think about or making a moral decision, we have to think critically. We have to ask questions. We have to test. We have to synthesize. In short, TATS. T-A-T-S. T-A-T-S. TATS. Remember that. Because our presentation is not going to be your normal one. This is going to be synthesizing what would be a satisfactory moral theory. Like, ano nga ba talaga? We're not here, the question is not begging of ano yung most satisfactory moral theory. It is asking of whether what is the most, or what would be a satisfactory moral theory. Like, ano kaya itsura? Ano kaya itsura ng isang nakaka-satisfactory na moral theory? Ano meron? What will make it a satisfactory moral theory? We're not here to find and debate about a lot of moral theories, but we're here to ponder and find the truth for ourselves so that we will be able to reach up to a conclusion answering this first one, synthesis. What would be a satisfactory moral theory be like? Now, proceeding with this one, let us ponder this moral theories. Kasi mo, if you're all seeing this one on your screen, there's a lot of moral theories. There is like virtue ethics, there's utilitarianism, there's doctrine of double effect, there's ethical egoism, there's cultural relativism, divine command theory, feminism, categorical moral reasoning, natural law theory, social contract theory, graded absolutism. A lot of moral theories out there, and unfortunately, not all of them are the same. Bakit? They all say different things on each other, and they all cannot be true at the same time. Truth, as I said, must be absolute. It cannot be contradicting. It cannot be inconsistent. It must be consistent and logical to be accepted. That is why here on the red line here, either one of them is true, all is false, or all of them are false. Because that's the law. You cannot have both things at the same time saying against each other. Hindi naman pwede na nasa Cubao ka and then nasa Anonas ka rin at the same time. That's illogical. And upon pondering here, we're going to tackle very shortly about all of these moral theories, and let's ponder why all of them cannot be both true, or all of them can be, at some sense, true at the same time. Because they all say things differently. They make sense, but it doesn't necessarily mean that all of them can be true. That's why we cannot build a super moral theory na parang, ito na, pagsamahin natin lahat to, and then that's going to be the super moral theory. That's impossible. Because some of them are not the same. So let's ponder first. This is just a very quick background lang. First is relativism. Relativism focuses on the view that truth and falsity, right and wrong, standards of reasoning, and procedures of justification are products of differing conventions and frameworks of assessments. Ang lalim ng English, but let me just give you a hint. Relativism focuses on the idea that the decision of right and wrong is dependent on the person. For example, ikaw, you believe that this is true, but for me, this is false. Now, for that, it's relativism. There's no foundation of what is truly facts or factual or true. Or there's no right and wrong, basically. It's just relative, as I said. See the differences. Relativism, parang kung ano yung tingin mong tama, that's true for you. O kung ano yung tingin kong tama para sa akin, which may not be, let's say for example, true for you, that's the thing. But that's relativism. Let's focus on the second one. This one is subjective relativism. This is just under kung ano yung relativism because there's a lot of things, a broad idea. First is subjective relativism. Ibig sabihin, yung pagka-relative mo, nakadepende talaga sa isang tao or sa isang society. For example, holds that each person decides right and wrong for himself or herself. Say for example, si Michael or si Mix, tingin nila ganito yung tama para sa kanila. Ito yung tama at mali. Ganun ang relativism. Kung ano yung tingin mong tama at mali. That is subjective relativism if and only if yung tao yung pinag-uusapan. Ngayon, what if cultural relativism naman yung pinag-uusapan natin? It now becomes a wider range of people. Bakit? Is that cultural relativism is the ethical theory that the meaning of right and wrong rests with the society's actual moral guidelines. For example, sa isang tribe sa Africa, there's a tribe in Africa in which cannibalism is accepted. Now, for them, it's just correct and it's just acceptable, morally permissible. But for us, it's wrong. Cannibalism is murder. It's not accepted. Now, see the differing or contradicting ideas. The culture of that, yung right and wrong ay nakadepende sa culture ng society na yon. Parang ganon. Nakarest siya sa society. Kunwari, kung ano yung tama sa Philippines, sa Pilipinas, may not be true to other countries, like say for example America. That's how it rests upon. So ganun yung cultural, mas malaki siya. Now, second theory or moral theory is another, ethical egoism. It focuses that each person should focus exclusively on his or her self-interest. Anong pinagkaiba nito sa, let's say, subjective relativism? Now, subjective relativism and ethical egoism has some sort of same ideas but has different different clause or may pinagkakaiba pa din. The first is that ethical egoism focuses on the self-interest. Like for example, kung ano yung talagang magbe-benefit. Yung subjective relativism focuses on the idea of me as a person deciding what is right and wrong. Ethical egoism focuses naman kung ano yung mas be-benefit sa akin. Kung ano yung pinaka-best para sa akin, yun ang ethical egoism. Kung magiging tama lang yan if yun ay best para sa akin. So, ganon. So, parang may ego, parang ako yung deciding factor. That's ethical egoism. Now, divine command theory, of course, everybody is familiar with this one, is the idea that God is the one who decides what is right and wrong. Basically, 10 Commandments, as what all people always believe the divine command theory be like. So parang yung divine command theory focuses on the idea that our morality is dependent upon God's commands. So if we disobey God, basically we are sinners. That's what Catholic Church and a lot of churches will say. That's how the divine command theory basically. Whether kung sumusunod tayo sa utos ng Diyos, dun lang siya magiging factor whether we are wrong, morally wrong, or morally right. Now, second, another, Kantianism. We already talk about Kantianism. Kantianism has a lot of things like deontology, ethics, and yung ating yung at di natin makakalimutan din yung universal principle niya. Like attributed to Immanuel Kant, Kant believed that people's actions ought to be guided by moral laws and that these moral laws were universal. Remember our topic about Kantianism in which people will have to decide whether, alam mo, natatandaan pa ba natin yung universalizability, in which of course an action can be morally correct if and only if all people will do it as well. That's Kantian ethics. We cannot also rule out yung means and ends. Diba? That's this part of Kantianism. Now, another is this one, the categorical imperative. The first is act only according to the maxim whereby you can at the same time will that it should become a universal law. As I said, universalizability. Another is act so that you will always take both yourself and other people as ends in themselves and never only as a means to an end. Ibig sabihin, hindi mo pwedeng gamitin ibang tao sa kung ano mang gusto mo lang. They have to do something, they have to benefit out of it. You shouldn't use people only for yourselves. So that's how it works out in Kantian ethics. Now, also, deontology ethics focuses on rules or duties imposed that we should all follow because we are autonomous. I think all of us have already talked about Kantian ethics. But this one is perhaps one of the most famous one. Utilitarianism. Based upon the principle of utility, ibig sabihin, if a certain action would be good, if and only if the consequence of the action produces a maximum increase in happiness. For example, if talagang sobrang daming natutuwa sa ginawa mo, then basically, it is good. If it's benefiting a lot or several people or the majority of people, then that action can be morally permissible. That's how it copes up with utilitarianism. Another, ang dami, masabi siya madami, social contract theory. Ibig sabihin na naman social contract theory is that a party A morality consists of set of rules governing how people are to treat one another that rational people will agree to accept for their mutual benefit. Ibig sabihin lang naman ng social contract theory is that parang all of us have set of norms or set of rules that the society must have and must follow. Say for example, let's say for example, it is accepted na rumespeto sa mga kapwa mo. Right? That's somehow under the social contract theory. Ibig sabihin, there is a contract. There is a social or societal contract that all of us would have to follow. So that's how social contract theory is being done. So parang for example, the government has rules in which of course we say it's positive law. Positive law is the law. Let's say for example yung batas ng Pilipinas, and that must be followed, accepted siya. So that's parang social contract theory. There is a theory that is an accepted rules, accepted accepted norms of all people that should follow. So pag hindi mo yon ginawa, parang kang disrespectful, parang ganyan. So another is that virtue ethics, in which focuses on, alam na natin kay Aristotle, is another ancient Greeks. It's about finding the quest to understand and live a life of moral character. Yung parang galing mo talaga, honest, brave, you're just, you're generous, and a lot of good things, which is good. That is virtue ethics. Now, also, natural law theory, the theory of natural law. Alam na natin yan, that all things is in rational order. It's built in, nasa sa atin na yon. All of us somehow knows what is right and wrong and must follow what is right. Because somehow it is imposed by the divine law, by God. So we focus on this, natural law theory from Saint Thomas Aquinas. Now, the doctrine of double effect is only an application of the natural law theory imposed by or educated by Saint Thomas Aquinas. Of course, it's just a different thing. But really, doctrine of double effect is on how we solve, for most cases, moral dilemmas. Ibig sabihin ng moral dilemmas is that we're finding a solution into an ethical problem. Say, for example, you have to save 1 person or 5 person. Which will you choose? Now, that's a thing. Magkakaroon ng dilemma. Most cases, we use the doctrine of double effect. So, here, ang dami. And this one is graded absolutism, in which, alam natin, this view holds that moral conflict does exist. This is also an application of another moral theory, graded absolutism, that there is indeed a hierarchy ng mga right choices. Ibig sabihin, if there is an ethical dilemma, there is a much better hierarchy, or parang mayroong isang type ng rule na talagang yung pinaka-absolute. Absolute rule siya, highest siya sa hierarchy. Ibig sabihin, yun talaga yung susundin. So that's just in case na magkaroon ng ethical problem. This is used in such cases, say for example, there's conflicting moral theories or conflicting decisions. We use graded absolutism. But hindi natin siya kailangang pag-aralan pa. Because why? We are here to focus on how we get away with murder, or how we will be able to structure our satisfactory moral theory. What are the guiding principles of having a satisfactory moral theory? There's a lot of options. There's several of ethical theories and moral theories over the course of history, and there's a lot of things to ponder. But we're not going to do that. Yun yung salimbala ko, but that's the thing. A lot. But how is it that a lot of ethicists, a lot of philosophical person is here, and yet they cannot come up with a theory? Why? Di natin alam. But one thing that we can do is to ponder and think. That is why here on our presentation, we're going to tackle about what would be a satisfactory moral theory be like? With a theme, how to get away with murder, uncovering truth across unforeseen exploration. This is brought to you by Sige Kuya Paul Productions. So as we start, let us ponder and think the first topic on our presentation. First, we have to have a modest conception of human beings. A satisfactory theory would first be sensitive to the facts about human nature. Humans are entirely different from one another, each having their own unique abilities and needs. Ibig sabihin, humans have just a right fit. Ibig sabihin, we are humans. We are somehow sinful or doing a lot of things, doing good and bad things. We have to accept that fact. We are social creatures living together in groups, wanting one another's company, needing one another cooperation, and capable of caring about one another's welfare. Ever since we have recognized the value of human life, it is infinite. We are created in the image of God, whether you are an atheist or not, you can't deny one's intrinsic value. The study of ethics and morality will not exist if we are not valuable. It means that our conception of human beings must be sensitive. We have to accept the reality of human beings. That we are social persons. There is no man like an island, parang ganyan. That we are created in the image of God. No, kung atheist ka, that's fine. Why? Because we cannot deny one's intrinsic value. You cannot deny that a person is valuable. That a person is infinitely valuable, infinitely loved, and infinitely worthy. Worth. That we all have value. And if we are able to accept that one, we're able to formulate. Bakit? If we think that people, if we think that humans are just animals evolved from evolution or something like that, then perhaps if we're animals, then we are not entirely valuable at all. Kasi nag-miss out tayo eh. But if we are valuable true enough, then the study of ethics and morality must be taken seriously. Because it would not exist if humans are not entirely significant. We have to think about our decisions. And our decisions, and one truth that we have to accept is that human beings are valuable. If the satisfactory moral theory that we would like to have is focusing on the conception, the correct conception of human beings, such as our infinite value, such as our needs, such as our unique abilities, then perhaps we're in the right track. That is what it's like to have a satisfactory moral theory. Now, coming about on the second is our next coming about our next presentation is on how reason gives rise to ethics. Next one.
How reason give life to ethics? First of all, ano nga ba ang ethics? Simula pa naman to nung prelim, dinidiscuss na natin siya. Ethics is the discipline concerned with what is morally good and bad, and morally right and wrong. Tulad nga ng sinabi ko kanina, prelim pa lang, ilang ulit na rin natin naririnig ang salitang ethics. At ilang ulit na rin nating binibigyan to ng sagot. Ano nga ba ang ethics? It is a study kung ano ang morally right or wrong, just or unjust. Sa madaling salita, pinag-aaralan dito kung ano nga ba ang tama at mali. Ngayon, how did reason give rise to ethics? Let's break this down. First, what is reason in ethics? Reason is the ability to think logically and rationally. In other words, or sa madaling salita, nakakapag-isip ng tuwid or tama. Kung wala tayong reason, we are like animals. Ilang ulit na natin tong naririnig, ilang ulit natin tong narinig, ang pagkakaiba ng tao at hayop ay ang tao ay may logic or reasoning at ang hayop wala, they are acting based on their instinct. Hindi alam ng mga hayop kung ano ang tama sa mali. Now to discuss how reason give rise to ethics, there's always a reason behind on every action that we do. Kahit mali, kahit tama. Kahit gawin mo yung tama, may reason pa rin. Kahit gawin mo yung mali, may reason pa rin nakasunod. As I have said earlier, we have what animals have. We also have our instincts. But animals don't have what we have, which is logic and reasoning. Hindi nga alam ng mga hayop kung ano ang tama sa mali. Kasi, ang actions nila is just based on their instincts, based on their feelings, on their guts. Tayo kasi, nakakapag-isip tayo kung ano ang tama sa mali. Connected ang reasoning sa ethics is because ethics is a study of what is morally right or wrong, and reasoning is the ability to think if that action is right or wrong. Ipapasok ko lang sana dito ang ethical reasoning because it is the ability to assess or identify the actions that is being done. Sa ethical reasoning, dito mo ina-assess yung actions mo. Dito mo ina-identify kung tama nga ba yung ginagawa mo. And that is the reason why reason give rise to ethics.
A variety of motives or learning virtue ethics. There are morally praiseworthy motives. A mother loves and cares for her children. She does not want to promote their interests simply because they are people she can help. Her attitude towards them is entirely different from her attitude towards other people. And also, there are praiseworthy actions such as a man being loyal to his friends. Only a philosophical fool would want to eliminate love, loyalty, and the like from our understanding of moral life. If such motives were eliminated and instead people simply calculated what was best, we would all be much worse off. Anyway, who would want to live in a world without love and friendship? Virtue ethics suggests treating our character as a lifelong project, one that has the capacity to truly change who we are. The goal is not to form virtues that mean we act ethically without thinking, but to form virtues that help us see the world clearly and make better judgments as a result. Being virtuous means we are living in high moral standards.
Let us move on to human beings should be treated as ends and not as means. Based on the philosopher Immanuel Kant, said that rational human beings should be treated as an end in themselves and not as something else. So tayong mga tao, deserve natin na itrato tayo ng tama. Huwag natin na hayaan yung mga tao na apakan yung rights natin as a person. Sa tao rin, as an individual, halimbawa ako, dapat itrato kita na ang deserve mo. Like, kunwari, itrato kita bilang isang tao ka. Yung bilang isang karapatan mo as tao, dapat hindi ko inaapakan or hindi ko dinedegrade yung pagkatao. Sometimes, it is morally wrong to treat people as means. So, bakit nga ba mali? Like, mali nga talaga na ang isang tao ay itatrato natin as means or gagamitin natin Ito kasi yung idea na gagamitin mo yung isang tao para lang umangat ka sa something or para makakuha ka ng benefits para sa sarili mo lang. Pero, ang hindi mo alam ay yung isang tao na yon ay naaapakan mo na pala yung karapatan niya as a person. So, next slide. So, I have a question for you. How about you? Do you treat other people as means or you treat them as what they deserve? Kasi ako, bilang isang tao, gusto ko, itrato ko yung isang tao ng tama. Or itrato ko siya base sa kanyang karapatan bilang pangtao. Hindi hindi ko itinatrato yung isang tao bilang isang kagamitan. Or gagamitin ko yung tao na to para lang makaangat ako. Yun yung idea na dapat natin tanggalin. Kasi may mga ganitong tao talaga. Like, hindi nila iniisip yung ibang tao if naaapakan na ba nila to or ginagamit na ba nila to. Pero hindi naman lahat ay ganito ang klase ng pag-iisip. Meron tayong tinatawag na ginagamit ang isang tao voluntarily. Hindi siya yung sa pilitan or what. Voluntarily. So, all human beings ought to be treated with respect. So, respeto ang number one na kailangan natin sa isang tao. Ina-earn ang respeto. Kaya dapat lahat tayo, we respect one another so that yung isang tao ay irespeto ka din. Hindi kasi na hindi mo siya irerespeto tapos gusto mong makatanggap sa kanya ng respeto. And that's wrong. So, the fact that we are human has value. Siyempre, lahat tayo ay may value. Yung ibang tao, sinasabi nila na wala silang kwenta or wala silang value sa mundo ko. Pero ang totoo nun, ay lahat tayo may value. Lahat tayo ay may karapatan. So, lahat ng tao ay may value, hindi lang alam ng iba kung ano yung value nila sa mundo. So, next slide. Using other people as mean with a purpose doesn't mean that we're criticizing them. So, ito yung nabanggit ko kanina. Yung ginagamit natin yung isang tao, pero hindi siya morally wrong. Ang idea nito is like, ang example nito, yung mga soldiers. So, sa next slide natin, ipapakita ko yung example nito. Kung sino yung mga tao na ginagamit natin, pero hindi ibig sabihin nun, kini-criticize natin sila. Or inaapakan natin yung pagkatao. Next po. Treating someone as a means does not necessarily mean that the person is good. It just means that the person is a medium used to achieve something. So, ito nga yung sinasabi ko kanina, di ba? Na hindi porkit ginamit natin yung isang tao na yon ay kini-criticize na natin. Yung rip-off na yung pagtatrato natin sa kanila. Hindi ganun yun. Kasi merong mga tao nagsiserve talaga to someone, especially in our country. Or kunyari, example na lang ako, isang boss ng isang company. Then someone, ginagamit ko siya as an employee ko. So we see that many times people are voluntarily ready to be a means for completion of something. So, meron tayong tinatawag na mga tao na ready na gamitin sila para sa kapakanan ng isang tao or ng isang country. Next slide. Next slide. There are people who voluntarily offer themselves to serve or as leader. So this is what I've said, na may mga taong nagvo-volunteer or ino-offer yung sarili nila para gamitin or para mag-serve to someone or sa country natin. Kagaya nga ng sinabi ko, sa mga soldiers or yun sa mga nagtatrabaho sa company. Hindi ibig sabihin nun na nagtatrabaho sila sa atin, mali na or morally wrong. Inaapakan na natin yung pagkatao nila. Inaapakan na natin yung karapatan nila bilang tao or hindi na natin sila binibigyan ng respeto. Ang ibig sabihin nun ay nag-volunteer sila, in-offer nila yung sarili nila para mag-serve sa'yo or sa country. Next slide. So, this last slide, bibigyan ko kayo ng example ng workers. Yung factory workers, binolunteer nila yung sarili nila para gumawa ng something sa mga tao, di ba? Yung mga factory workers, sila yung mga gumagawa ng mga products natin, di ba? So, hindi ibig sabihin nun na in-offer nila yung sarili nila. Ibig sabihin nun, hindi ibig sabihin nun na yung may-ari ng factory na yan ay inaapakan yung pagkatao ng mga workers nito. Ang ibig sabihin lang nun ay nagsiserve sila doon sa factory na yun. Which is tama, which is morally right. Kasi, yung sarili nila yung in-offer nila and hindi yun sa pilitan. So, next naman ay yung soldiers. One of the best example ay yung soldiers. They volunteer themselves to fight for our country, di ba? Like, sumabak sila sa gera, sinacrifice nila yung sarili nila para lang ma-save yung country, malabanan yung ibang country, or yung mga terrorists. So, hindi porket ginagamit ang isang tao, ibig sabihin nun, mali na. Morally wrong na talaga siya or kinikriticize na natin siya. So, yun. Move on na tayo sa next recording. Okay na.
So next is right action as living according to the best plan. Right action that is according to the best plan just means that we act accordingly to what will be beneficial to the person. This might not always be convenient in a sense to them, but the highest good is being prioritized over the desires of the person. We should always think critically based on facts and being impartial to our decision, and which should not subject to fallacies and ethical contradictions. So first, isa-isahin natin. I-define natin muna yung living according to the right action and living according to the best plan. Living according to the right actions means making choices and taking actions that align with what is morally and ethically right. It involves adhering principles, values, and standards that promote the well-being of one's and others. To live according to the best plan naman is to have a well thought out and considered approach to life. It means making decision based on in careful deliberation, considering the consequences and potential outcomes of one's action. So sabi dito, right action as living according to the best plan is no man is an island. Hindi ka lang mag-a-act para sa sarili mo. Dapat i-consider mo din yung ibang tao. For example, dapat kung gagawa ka ng action is dapat hindi lang mag-benefit sa'yo. Dapat i-consider mo din yung magiging benefit nito sa mga tao na nasa paligid mo. So, sabi din dito, yung right action, dapat yung action, magiging action mo sa goals mo or sa plans mo, sa goals mo or dreams is dapat naka-align sa kung ano yung ethically and morally right. And then, dapat, yung magiging action mo is, dapat pinag-iisipan mo. And then, dapat i-consider mo din yung consequences and potential outcomes ng magiging action mo. So, napaka-importante i-consider natin yung consequences and potential outcomes ng ating magiging mga action kasi at the end of the day, tayo lang din naman yung magpe-face ng mga negative consequences kung hindi maayos yung ano natin, yung mga magiging action natin sa plan. So, for example, way back when I was in Leyte, meron kaming tinatawag na linggo ng kabataan. So, party ng activity na to is tree planting, paglilinis ng kapaligiran, at paglilinis ng ilog. So, yung ina-aim namin dito is magbigay ng unity and then makatulong sa mga tao na sa paligid namin at sa community namin. So yung mga naging action namin is yun yung tree planting, paglilinis ng kapaligiran, and then ilog is hindi lang siya nagbigay ng benefit sa amin, is nagbigay ng benefit sa amin pati na din sa mga tao nasa paligid namin. And then wait lang. So, sorry. So dapat so sana yan. So, yung mga naging action namin is hindi lang nakatulong sa community namin at sa mga tao na sa paligid namin, pati na din mga hayop na mapabuti yung habitat nila. Yun lang po sa right action as living according to the best plan.
uh, Jasper, for presenting that one. That is true. So right actions, living as living according to the best plan, is about just planning out, guys, your decisions. Remember on what Sir Paul have talked us about yung 7 steps of making a moral decision. That's just one part of thinking the correct way of the right actions. You have to focus on the idea that yung ginagawa natin para sa best sa para sa best ng ating community, and not just thinking about ourselves alone, because totoo naman correct si Jasper, we're not an island, no man is an island, kumbaga. So next, presenter Frances.
So, start tayo sa the moral community, duty, and moral obligations. So, start muna tayo sa community. Ano ba yung community? Di ba, komunidad yon. And ano bang nasa isang community? Di ba, mga mamamayan? Then, what happens if that community becomes moral? So, ang nangyari din is yung mga members of the community, yung mga mamamayan, no, naging moral na din. That's why we have those people called as moral agents. And ano ba yung mga moral agents? Sila yung mga tao na dapat alam yung tama sa mali, and they are responsible for their actions so that they cannot affect or cause any harm to others. That's why in here it was written as the moral agents should be concerned with everyone whose welfare might be affected by what we do. And next that is Humans should not just live according to what is reasonable and logical. Hindi porket tama sa'yo, eh tama na din sa iba. And hindi porket mali sa'yo, ay mali na din sa iba. We all have different thinkings. Ang kailangan natin dito is that yung reason natin dun, bilang part of the community is we're the same. Kaya here we also have the moral obligations tell us that the our duties bilang moral agents must be part of the moral community. It should be always interconnected with that. So ano ba yung pinagkaiba ng duties sa obligations na yan? Yung duty kasi, yun yung action natin towards the obligations. Yun yung kailangan natin gawin para ma-achieve yung obligation na yun. And yung obligation naman is yung para siyang rules or requirement para na required nating gawin. So, there are some things that we just ought to do and follow, considering that it is not contradictory and subject to ethical criticism. Ethical criticism. Ano ba yung ethical criticism na yan? Yung ethical criticism kasi it is something na action na tama sa para siyang tama sa atin pero may mali siya dun sa iba. And it is subjective kasi nga hindi naman natin alam kung kailan siya babagay sa kung tama siya sa atin dahil nga part tayo dun sa community na yon, naging tama lang siya. And kung nasa ibang community tayo, magiging mali naman yung action na yon. And that's why nagkakaroon tayo ng mga duties and obligations dahil doon. And for last, we have obligations that should follow. Talaga naman yung obligations na yon ay required nating gawin. Especially rules yun na kailangan talaga nating gawin. Like, for example, batas yan. Kailangan nating sundin. We are obliged to follow that. Dahil kung hindi natin gagawin, meron tayong consequences na makakaharapin. It's either pwede tayong makulong or even death. Lalayo pa ba tayo dahil murder nga yung topic natin. So, and the duties that we do to make the betterment of society, nagiging better yung society dahil nga sa mga actions natin na pinagagawa. Obliged tayong gawin yung mga obligations na yun kasi yun yung kailangan natin gawin. And duty natin and yung action natin is duty na yun dahil kailangan nating gawin yung bagay na yun because that is the right thing that we needed to do.
That is true for Francis right here. Duty and moral obligations is something that all of us would have to commit. Bakit? Remember guys, duty and moral obligations is what our society needs. Parang kasi lagi natin narinig nowadays, the concept or the idea of deserve ko naman to. Deserve ko naman to. It's my right. It's my thing. But pagdating sa moral and duty obligations, we tend to forget those things. That's illogical. That's unacceptable. We always have to forget it is not always our rights, but it's our duty and moral obligations that make us important to the society. Lagi tandaan yun. We have rights and those rights are important, but we have to face a fact that we also have duty and moral obligations that we are committed to the society for a better gain. That's something that kailangan natin gawin. Kaya di naman pwedeng puro rights na lang. Di naman pwedeng deserve ko naman to, deserve ko naman yan. Yes, maaring deserve mo yan. But do not always assume. You always have to give something back to the society.
Let me ask you something. Kapag ba may nagkakamaling tao sa inyo, ano ang ginagawa nyo? Treat them as what they deserve or treat them as you wanna be treated? Most of us, we choose to treat other people depends on the way they had treat us. One who treat others well deserve to be treated well in return, while one who treat others badly deserve to be treated badly in return. For example, Smith has always been generous, helping you whenever she could. And now, she is in trouble and needs your help. You now have a special reason to help her. Beyond the general obligation, you must be helpful to everyone. By contrast, consider someone with the opposite history. Your neighbor Jones has always refused to help you out. One day, for example, your car would not start, and he would not give you a ride to work. He just could not be bothered. Sometime later, though, he has car trouble and asks you for a ride. Now, Jones deserved to fend for himself. Well, para sa atin, mukhang tama siya. Ganti-ganti lang, kumbaga, di ba? Pero guys, hinay-hinay lang sa pagganti sa ibang tao sa paraang inaakala nating deserve nila. Because it doesn't always mean that treating people as they deserve is always correct. It has its own inconsistencies. For example, if your partner cheated on you, does it mean you should cheat as well? Let's say, sa isang pamilya, may nanay, may tatay, at dalawang anak. One day, si tatay nag-cheat. At dahil walang lihim na hindi nabubunyag, ang paglulokong ito ni Mister ay nalaman ni Mrs. So, malamang si Mrs. nasaktan siya nung nalaman niya yon. Then, ang ginawa niya, yung pagkukulang at hinahanap niyang pagmamahal sa asawa niya, ay hinanap niya sa iba. Basically, gumanti siya. Sa senaryo na ito, dito pumapasok yung idea na hindi lahat ng pagganti o pagtrato sa ibang tao na sa tingin natin ay deserve nila ay laging tama. Lalo na kung yung pagganti natin ay isang-samang paraan. 'Di ba? May kasabihan nga tayo, excuse me. Ang isang pagkakamali ay hindi kayang itama ng isa pang pagkakamali. Excuse. Tulad sa kwento, nag-cheat si father, then naghanap din ng ibang lalaki si mother bilang ganti sa pagluloko ng asawa niya. Ang tanong, naitama ba ni mother yung pagkakamali ni father? Di ba hindi? Mas gumula lang yung sitwasyon para sa mga bata. Sa totoong buhay, hindi ko naman nilalahat. Pero di ba, madalas sa mga broken family, iba yung nagiging trato ng stepmom and stepdad sa mga totoo nilang anak kumpara sa kanilang stepson and stepdaughter. Kaya minsan, yung mga stepson and stepdaughter ay nakakaramdam ng pagkukulang sa pagmamahal at sa pag-aaruga ng isang magulang. At ang nagiging resulta ay ang pagre-rebelde. Di naman din natin sila masisisi dahil wala tayo sa sitwasyon at hindi mo naman lubos na mauunawaan ang isang bagay kung hindi mo pa ito nararanasan. Kaya, ang aking maipapayo ay dapat sa lahat ng gagawin nating aksyon at desisyon sa buhay, lagi nating pipiliin yung kabutihan. Sabi nga ni Kisses de Laven sa isang interview na kung saan ay pinapili siya between maging mabuti o maging tama. Ito yun. Ito yung totoo, yung buong sinabi ni Kisses doon. Ito yung buo niyang sagot. To summarize this, ang sabi niya, pinipili niya ang maging mabuti kesa maging tama. Bakit? Kasi lahat ng tao ay kayang maging tama, pero hindi lahat ng tao ay kayang maging mabuti. Ang tanong, ano nga ba ang pagkakaiba ng dalawa? Pag sinabi mong pagiging mabuti, ito ay pumapatungkol sa mabuting pagtrato natin sa ibang tao, kahit na ito pa man ay nakagawa sa atin ng pagkakamali. For example, pinagdamutan ka ng pagkain ng kaklase mo. Tapos, isang araw, nakita mo siyang walang makain. Kaya ikaw, dahil mabuting tao ka, Bibigyan mo siya ng pagkain kahit na pinagdamutan ka man niya noon. Sa kabilang banda, pag sinabi mo namang pagiging tama, minsan nami-misinterpret to ng ibang tao. Minsan kasi, akala natin tama na yung desisyon natin, pero hindi pala. Sa tingin natin, tama siya kasi nag-benefit tayo. Pero, paano naman yung iba? Balikan uli natin yung kwento. Naghanap ng ibang lalaki si Mother kasi feeling niya deserve din ng asawa niyang lalaki na mapalitan. Gusto niyang ipakita na hindi kawalan yung lalaki. Para kay Mother, tama yung naging desisyon niya. Kasi nag-benefit siya. At kahit papaano ay napupuwangan ng bago niyang lalaki yung pagkukulang ng asawa niya. Eh paano naman yung mga anak nila? Si Mother, nagpakasaya, tas ang ending yung mga bata yung nagsuffer. Diba? So, doon naman tayo sa treat other people as you wanna be treated. Meaning nito, simple lang. Tratuhin mo yung ibang tao sa kung anong gusto mong pagtrato nila sa'yo. Ano bang gusto nating pagtrato sa atin ng ibang tao? 'Di ba? Yung matrato ng mabuti. Kaya dapat irespeto natin yung ibang tao at ipakita yung pagmamahal natin sa pamamagitan ng pagtulong sa mga tao lubos na nangangailangan ng ating tulong. Turo nga ng simbahang Katoliko, we Christian, as children of God, our purpose in life is to love and serve other people. In addition to this, according to the book of Luke, chapter 6, verse 27 to 36, love your enemies, do good to those who hate you, bless those who curse you, and pray for those who spitefully use you. Kaya bilang tugon, kahit na gaano pa kasama at kasakit yung ginawa ng ibang tao sa atin, dapat ang lagi nating ganti ay kabutihan. Kaaway man ito o kaibigan. Mahirap mang tanggapin at patawarin na lang yung mga taong nagkakasala sa atin. Pero isipin mo, kung gaganti ka, matatapos ba yung alitan? Diba hindi? Bagkus, mas lalo lang itong madadagdagan. Okay, alam ko namang, kaya lang naman din tayo gumaganti sa ibang tao is para sa hinahanap nating pantay na pagtrato at hustisya. Sa paanong paraan nga ba natin ito matatamasa? Ngayon ay, pakinggan naman natin ang susunod na reporter para i-discuss at explain sa atin ng husto kung ano nga ba ang fairness and justice.
So for justice fairness, justice means giving each person what he or she deserves, or in more traditional terms, giving each person his or her due. Justice and fairness are closely related terms that are often today used interchangeably. Justice usually has been used with reference to a standard of rightness, impartiality. Fairness often has been used as an ability to judge without reference to one's feelings or interests. Fairness has also been used to refer to the ability to make judgments that are not overly general but that are concrete and specific to a particular case. So, ang katarungan ay nag-uugma sa konsepto ng pantay-pantay na oportunidad. Ito ay nangangahulugan ang lahat ng tao ay may pare-parehong pagkakataon na makamit ang kanilang layunin at pangarap. Ang sistemang nagbibigay daan sa lahat para umunlad. At hindi lamang iilang pribilehyo ay maituturing na mas katarungan. Ang malalimang katarungan naman ay naglalaman sa pag-unawa sa konteksto ng bawat sitwasyon. Ito ay nagbibigay importansya sa pag-alam sa mga sanhi ng isang gawain o problema bago magbigay ng isang hatol. Ang masusing pag-aaral ng mga ugat ng kahirapan, diskriminasyon at iba pang issue ay mahalaga upang mahanap ang tunay na solusyon. Ang makabuluhan at malalimang katarungan ay naglalaman ng dialogo at pakikipag-unayan sa lipunan. Ito ay nangangahulugang ang pamahalaan at iba't ibang sektor ng lipunan ay nagtutulungan upang mahanap ang pinakamahusay na solusyon sa mga suliranin. Ang pagbibigay naman ng edukasyon tungkol sa katarungan ay mahalaga upang mapalalim ang pangunawa sa bawat isa sa kahalagahan nito. Sa pamamagitan ng edukasyon, mas magiging malaya ang mga tao na magpahayag ng kanilang mga opinyon at makilahok sa mga proseso ng pagpapasya. Ang katarungan din ay hindi lamang tungkol sa kasalukuyan, kundi pati na rin sa hinaharap. Ang mga hakbang na isinasagawa ngayon para sa katarungan ay dapat na may layuning magtagumpay sa pangmatagalang pag-unlad at kaayusan. Sa ganitong paraan, ang katarungan ay nagsisilbing pundasyon ng isang lipunan na tinataguyod ang kapayapaan, pagkapantay-pantay at pag-unlad para sa lahat.
Everyone, narinig naman natin from Michael that justice is about like how the government operates. Because sa mapansin natin, the government operates with, it should operate rather, on justice and fairness. So justice and fairness, to give you a quick background, justice and fairness focuses on the idea that everyone has their rights and is protected by those rights, and there must be fairness and rules in establishing rules and establishing set of norms that the society must follow. Ganun yung justice and fairness. Now, most people will ask, ano pinagkaya ba ng justice and fairness? Justice is about getting people what they truly deserve, logically, without malicious intent, of course. Fairness is about making sure that all people will have the same treatment. Diba? Parang ganun. So, it's interlocked. It's lagi magkatikets justice and fairness. Justice cannot be justice if there's no fairness, and fairness is something that all of us will have to ponder. Bakit? Justice and fairness is about rules that is fair for everyone. Most people will hear this equality, gusto na lang equal rights. Most people gusto nila ang gusto mangyari. They want this and that. But justice and fairness is something that is the most high of the hierarchy. Yung justice and fairness is not about being equal. Hindi mo nung pwedeng isabihin na equal yung mga naninirahan sa maliit na bahay sa malaking bahay. Hindi mo pwedeng isabihin na equal dapat yung tax nila. Equality naman yun ah. Hindi mo pwede yun. Kasi yung sa mayaman, malaki yung tax nila na i-equate mo yun dun sa maliit. Lugi. There's no fairness. There's no justice. So you build justice upon the foundation of fairness. You cannot have justice without fairness. You can be fair, but you can be fair without having justice. Ibig sabihin, pwede kang maging fair man pero hindi siya makatarungan. Pero hindi pwede na ikaw ay makatarungan tas hindi fairness, hindi fair. So all of these are interlocked on the idea of giving people what they truly deserve and being fair at the same time. So that is how we will end our presentation on that one.